Hey guys, what's up? I'm reviewing the PSVR in 2019, letting you know the state of it. This is kind of a look at the hardware as combined with some of the software experience and what it's like to own it, and if it's a VR experience that you should invest into. Now it's usually going around $350 for a bundle, $300 for a package without the Move controllers. I got a bundle with Borderlands, Beat Saber, and 2 Move controllers. So right away, I do want to say my favorite thing about the PlayStation VR is that it really feels state of the art. That's the best way I could put it. I used to have the Oculus and I ended up returning it because I found the general device to be very clunky. It used kind of Velcro straps, so it felt kind of cheap to adjust. It was very tricky to adjust. Moving it back and forth with my glasses, it was not very good to use. But the PlayStation VR is a complete opposite in terms of the experience. It's exceedingly comfortable. It has multiple different kind of building components to it. It has a textured kind of grippy plastic material inside that helps it stay on your face. It's easy to clean off if someone's really sweaty. They're also comfortable on your head as well for long periods of times. And there's also multiple things to adjust, like the little dial on the back, which tightens it through the back so it doesn't slip. And it's easy to adjust on the top, with your forehead. But it's also easy to adjust the actual screen itself, forward and back. And I had no problems at all, even with my pretty big framed glasses. As you could see, this is a very comfortable headset, and the way they designed it is actually quite ingenious with how adjustable it is. This has a lot of impact on the VR experience, I think. It doesn't make it feel like it's as much work to put it on. It's easier to take a break, or if you have a call or something like that, you can actually take it off and jump back in relatively quickly. Not only that, but once you kind of get past a small learning curve, you can actually adjust it pretty easily on the fly to get an optimal kind of clear experience with how it looks on the screen without any blur. Now I can't say the same for Oculus. It's really tricky, and there are things you don't really have to do here, even like dialing the people and stuff like that. It's just kind of automatic, and you can even adjust it in the settings if you want with like one of your pictures. So what else do we have to talk about in terms of the hardware? Well, I think the screen here is pretty good, and I didn't really notice too much of a difference between this and the Oculus Rift. When it is all black, when you're in loading screens, the screen door effect is very prominent. You could definitely see it there. Again, if you don't know what the screen door effect is, it's pretty much exactly what it sounds like. You know those screen doors that prevent you from going outside, they prevent bugs from getting in. It kind of looks like that spiderwebby kind of screen door thing. But I didn't really notice it too much while playing games, so not much of an issue. It's just kind of annoying when you're in loading screens and stuff like that. Can make you a bit nauseous and dizzy because your eyes kind of have trouble focusing. We could talk about the controllers a little bit. Now, a lot of people kind of give them shit because they are quite old in terms of technology, but I would say I actually like the controllers. They have a very good ergonomic feel in your hand. The vibrations feel good. The buttons are pretty well laid out, but the side buttons are a little bit confusing with the share and select button. It is cool to see that the select button, if you hold it, it does reorient the screen, which is really nice and convenient. But they can be a little bit wonky sometimes. My problem is that I always get them mixed up. So if I'm playing Beat Saber, the blue one's on the wrong side and the red one's on the wrong side. Or in different games, it wants you to have a specific one, a specific hand. So you are going to have to, finagle and jingle them across your hands a couple times depending on, what game you're playing, which can be definitely annoying. Yeah. The tracking works pretty good though for the controllers, and for such an old technology, I guess they do work pretty well for me. I would say most games it's pretty comparable to something like the Oculus. Of course, you're not going to have as movable fingers and stuff like that, but I would say they work pretty good. You just got to make sure the camera's in the right position to get the right tracking. And now that is another area that I kind of don't like about the PSVR is the camera can be a bit wonky. You really got to set it up right. Get a very good view of yourself, and it's a little bit tricky because sometimes if you're sitting, it doesn't have a good view of you, so you might have to move it a little lower, angle it a little differently, and if you're standing up, you might have to move it again to get you standing up. Now, if you have a really ideal experience with ton of room, you're standing far back from it, and it has a very good angle for you, now you're going to get a pretty good experience without much hassle. The PlayStation VR does work better in smaller environments, but there still are some things you have to consider like that. And now for me, I seem to have a pretty good setup in that there's nothing around me that I'm going to hit, but I do have to kind of be mindful of my position with the camera. Another thing I want to touch on is moving through the menus. It really, with the controllers, is a huge pain in the ass. There's nothing really getting around it. You kind of have to hold the trigger and kind of flick your wrist side to side, and that kind of movement kind of reminds me of controlling the menus in the Wii, the original Wii. So if you're familiar with that, it's a bit clunky and tricky to get precise selections and stuff like that. Not a big deal, but I just kind of wish that the controllers had some kind of D-pad or something like that, like the Oculus, or even a joystick, which would make navigating the menus a lot easier. Now you can just kind of pick up your DualShock 4 and do it, but again, you're going to be fumbling all these controllers in your hand, and it can be annoying. I want to talk about some of the more general things about the PlayStation VR experience. I do like how it comes with a good demo CD. It has, around 10 or so games, or even more, with a variety of different experiences. Some are platformers like Moss, and some are raw data, which are kind of like horde-like shooters. You have kind of like a persistence game, which is kind of like a roguelike. I would imagine it to be kind of like a horror game, kind of like old school Doom or even Dead Space, and various other titles, and even a Dino kind of game, which is kind of like a godlike game where you control, and it's sort of like RTS. Overall, though, I really like this, that they provide this free demo CD to give you a good taste of the experience. There are some really good games that kind of surprised me, like Megalith, for example. Now, one thing I really liked about this game is it provided a really good social VR experience. And these kind of social VR experiences aren't really something you're going to be able to get elsewhere outside of the VR. Now, I'm not certain that this is unique to PlayStation VR, but over VR in itself, and I guess in terms of PlayStation VR, it probably does have the biggest market for people, probably the biggest audience. So you are going to find more communities perhaps in some of the other platforms that are smaller, harder to get into, and more expensive. But what we have here is a lot of mature and friendly gamers with most of the games that I've tried, with good communities. Megalith, most of the people I talk with are always pretty friendly and willing to talk to me about VR or just, how they like the game. And here's a good example of it right now.
Choose your type.
Hey, what's up, man?
How you doing?
Played this game before?
Yeah, I've played it a couple times.
Pretty cool, huh?
Yeah, it'd be cool if there's more levels and shit, though.
Now, I do want to talk a little bit about graphic fidelity, because that's something that's neither bad nor good in my opinion. Everything here definitely looks like a step back, and it's going to take some getting used to. You're not going to go into this, or at least you shouldn't expect God of War style graphics or 4K fidelity. As someone who's played some of these really good games, even at 4K like The Witcher 3 on my computer, with 40 to 50 FPS, it's definitely going to be a downgrade, but you're going to have to sacrifice that for the state of presence, which sometimes is worth it. Sometimes, like in a game like Wipeout, it actually makes racing feel quite different, because you could take those corners with your enhanced perception, and it feels like you're much better at racing. Whereas in my opinion, some games like Borderlands 2 don't really feel that much different. You do have your hands below you, and you could shoot a little differently, but overall I don't think they add to the experience that much. Of course, this is my opinion, but if you've played a game to death, or if you don't really like the game's gameplay, you're definitely going to notice some of these things, and they're going to be more nitpicky. Whereas something like Beat Saber, the graphic fidelity, and something like Megalith, which I really enjoy, it's not so much about the graphics, but more about the gameplay. And when these gameplay systems really match up with a VR experience, that is when something special happens. Take, for example, in Megalith, when I shoot, a spell, I can see the arrows kind of arcing through the sky, about to hit the opponent, or if someone's shooting something at me. It really does feel like an interesting kind of mechanic, an interesting way to aim and to see shots coming for you. Or if you raise a wall in front of you, it just feels really epic to have that protection, and in that sense of scale, being able to show a shield in front of you like that is really cool. But again, it just really depends on the game. Some games just really don't look that great, and I think a lot of people actually don't really recognize that enough. So now let's talk about PlayStation VR and a little bit about the cons. Well, it definitely sort of feels like a hole in your pocket, a burning hole in your wallet, whatever you want to say. I'm talking to multiple people in multiple games. and most of them seem pretty content with the experience. You know, no one's like mind blown or anything like that, I would say. But most, one guy I actually talked to was saying that he felt like it was fun, but not worth, you know, $300 or whatever he paid for it, even on the sale. So it definitely is an investment, and a lot of people can make this kind of bitter or not want to deal with the experience or learn how to, you know, enjoy it. It doesn't help that, you know, most of the top 10 games or so are around $30 each, you know. So you're going to be spending an extra $300 to get some of those top tier games if you want all of them, with all those different experiences. You know, let's say stuff like Creed, stuff like Firewall Zero Hour, stuff like Moss, Astrobot. Some of these top tier games are pretty expensive, around the same price as some of the games you're going to be buying for flat, you know. And if you don't get them on sale, it is going to be kind of an investment to get into those, especially if you're not sure, you know, what you're going to find there, because they are different than most games. You know, if you see a game like Call of Duty, or if you see a game even like God of War, you kind of know what to expect. But with some of these VR games, it's tricky to always know what to expect. So the PSVR setup does require a bit of cables and finagling with various boxes. It's a lot of stuff to unbox. But overall, the manual and setup experience is pretty good, and this is what the manual looks like. Pretty simple to follow, actually. I was able to get it set up, you know, in around 5 to 10 minutes without any issues at all. I would definitely say it's a little bit easier to set up than something like the Rift, where you're going to have to be putting these different cameras around the room to get that room scale experience here. It's definitely much easier. Some other things about the general experience overall, I think the loading times could be a bit quicker. Now this really does kind of depend if you have the PS4 Slim or the original or the PS4 Pro. Now with the PS4 Pro, you're probably going to get quicker loading times and a little bit better graphics. But with my PS4 Slim, loading times can be a bit annoying, and if you're looking at the screen door effect, it can make you a little bit nauseous. So overall, it is kind of annoying having to wait for things, having the thing on your head. Sometimes I close my eyes or push it forward a little bit and look at my phone, but it's just something that, you know, no one really likes loading times, and they are a bit more annoying, I would say, in PSVR. I do want to touch on Nausea a little bit. Now, this is sometimes a big deal for people when it comes to PlayStation VR, is that they don't really want to use it anymore because it's causing them nausea. Now, for me, nausea has been a little bit of a factor. Something like Until Rush of Dawn, the horror game where you're riding a roller coaster, was really bad for me. Going up and down that roller coaster, standing, did not make me feel good. I had to take a break, and even coming back later that night, I still felt a little bit nauseous. My stomach felt a little bit bloated, and I was burping a lot. Now, I don't have the best stomach in the world. I don't have, you know, like an unstoppable stomach. And if that's you, you might want to be careful depending on what kind of game you want to play. Now, some games like Megalith, for example, where I'm walking around and turning a lot and shooting a lot and stuff, didn't really have any impact on me. Whereas some games like Borderlands, where I'm pretty much doing the same thing, but there's more steep drops and things, it did kind of make me feel nauseous. So it really just kind of depends on the game. But most people do agree that you do become accustomed to it over time, and it doesn't affect you as much. But keep in mind, it can keep a damper on some early experiences, so just kind of keep a lookout for what you're playing, and if you're going to be extremely nauseous, maybe you know, ease into some of those experiences, or even avoid some of them altogether. Alright guys, that pretty much wraps up this video. So in conclusion, what are my thoughts on PSVR? Well, it's hands down the most comfortable VR headset that I've tried to date. It is very comfortable, and overall it's pretty fun to use. I think for me especially, it depends on what kind of game I'm playing. If I'm playing something like Beat Saber or Megalith, the experience feels really unique. However, some of the most hyped games like Borderlands and Skyrim, personally, since they're just a repeat of experience that I had in the past, they don't really feel that unique or worth my time, even with the presence and immersion that they do offer. Those games, I just kind of remember in my mind how sharp and vivid they used to look, and in VR, they just don't look as crisp. I think for VR especially, it's important to find new experiences and try new games, and that's probably what shines most about VR, and that's the same with PSVR as well. Now, in terms of some of the differences compared to the other platforms out there, I think the price is definitely cheaper, which makes it very good, as well as the comfort, and also I think the experience overall with tracking and in terms of the fidelity of the graphics is pretty comparable. So I think it's definitely probably the best VR system to buy, especially with some of these very, very good exclusives. Anyways, guys, thanks for checking out this extended PSVR review in 2019. I put a ton of work into this video, and if you want to check out some of my other videos on the channel, feel free to do so. I've done some other tech reviews and stuff like that, but I also have a ton of content just testing out various websites, seeing how to watch free movies and TV shows, how to stay secure on the internet, and stuff like that. I'll see you again very soon, guys. Let me know if you want to see more PSVR content, gaming content, or whatever, and keep it easy.